Why do cops often look down on private security?
That's a good question. Why do cops often look down on private security? I'm gonna say three things. Number one is police officers, I think, generally have an issue when private security doesn't understand the scope of their authority. You gotta remember, anything that we do that creates a bigger problem, a bigger issue that they have to respond to, we're basically creating more work. And in an area like Portland, pretty much any city that's out there, cops are already short-staffed. They already have a ton of things to do. So I can just assume private security guards that are contacting law enforcement to basically do their job, if it's to remove someone from property who's loitering, if it's to deal with low-level issues of infractions of policy, these are all things that private security is getting paid to do. So I would assume that a cop would get very annoyed to have to respond to a call to handle something that this private security guard should be able to handle and is well within the scope of their employment. On the flip side of that, when private security guards go too far outside of their scope and now they're doing something that the police officer has to basically show up and save this private security guard. You're trying to go hands-on, you're trying to detain somebody, you're trying to make an arrest, you're outside of the scope of authority of why you're there on that property. Now the law enforcement officer has to show up because this guy's trying to kick the shit out of you, or you guys are having some big brawl out in front of the property that you're on. I also think that there's a hint of, I don't want to say jealousy. The word that I'm looking for is, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Kyler, if it comes to you, feel free to throw it in there. But I do know that some police officers feel that they have to go through all of this training. They are mandated to respond to certain things in certain ways or not respond to certain things in certain ways. And then meanwhile, a person can become a private security guard. They can wear the uniform, they can carry a firearm, they have the ability to respond with lethal force if need be under certain circumstances, but they're not having to go through even a fraction of the training or the policy understanding or any of the mandated things that law enforcement has to do. And in some of those situations and circumstances, you can take Portland and definitely apply it to this. The security guards are making right at, if not more in some cases, than the law enforcement officer. So there is a little bit of like, hey, this doesn't make sense. I have to go to school for 6 months, and some people say that's not enough. I'm not here to debate that. But I have to go to school for 6 months. I have to pass all of these tests. I have to go through this extensive background check to be able to work on the street and do the things that I have to do. Meanwhile, this private security guard, he can do 20 hours of a course, and now he's basically able to work in a very similar capacity and maybe even in some situations not have to be beholden to the policies or the restrictions that I am. And he can make as much, if not more than me. What gives? And I get that. I also think that a lot of it just comes down to the general view of public for the industry of private security. Law enforcement is no different than just your average person. Many of you watching this video, you don't like private security, you don't take private security seriously, you don't respect private security. That doesn't change just because you put on a badge and a vest that has your city or municipality on it. Once you become a law enforcement officer, some of that ingrained bias, some of that negative view, it carries over. So those would be the three reasons why I think that cops tend to look down on private security. But one of the great things is that so many people now that are becoming law enforcement officers have worked in private security. I know for Echelon, we have a pipeline where we're sending a lot of our guys into law enforcement. So hopefully as they get further into their career, their view of private security is not so negative because they've worked in the industry, and maybe how they approach and interact with private security guards will carry over to those newer, younger cops that are coming up in the ranks, and maybe we can help bridge that gap. Again, I've said this before on many other videos. The whole purpose of creating this platform was to help educate security guards, but to also bridge that gap between law enforcement and private security. And hopefully having articulated conversations like this helps to do that. But what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Is there a valid reason for law enforcement officers to look down on private security, or do you think that it's unwarranted? I'd love to know your comments or know your feedback, so drop your comments below, all right? You guys be great.